Cowboys or the Lions?
This is fuzzy analysis, but I just can't imagine Detroit goes out like this. And that's really the end of it. Like, I did not expect Detroit to be as good this year as they were last year. I didn't look at them as a preseason Tier 1 Super Bowl contender. But it is almost impossible for me to imagine a scenario where and I understand now Amon-Ra's banged up, Terrion Arnold's on IR, but where a Detroit team that's been mostly healthy throughout the year is going to be de facto eliminated from playoff contention in the first week of December. I can't, especially because they haven't shown to me, they didn't go through like a month-long swoon. They still have that streak of not losing back-to-back intact. And so, and the flip side of that fuzzy analysis is, I saw firsthand how good Dallas can be last week, and we saw them come back from 21-0 down on Philly. It is very difficult for me to see a Cowboys team that right before that got beat by Arizona and blasted by the Broncos. I know the Broncos are good, but they don't blast people.
Yeah.
That they are all of a sudden in a 2-week stretch going to go Philly, Kansas City, Detroit, win. And so that is not the sharpest analysis. I understand it. But because of those scenarios, and it's in Detroit, and I think this is the first time all year Detroit has been desperate. Cowboys have been desperate, which means you've almost used like some of your desperation oil already. I like Detroit.
Well, here's the thing with that fuzzy analysis, as you called it. We would have absolutely said the same thing about the Chiefs. And we're still saying it. You know, like there's no way their backs against the wall, they're losing to Bo Nix in Denver. There's no way backs against the wall, Thanksgiving Day, all of America watching, most watched game ever maybe, regular season, they're not losing that to Dallas, and it's happened. I trust Dallas more. Now, a couple years ago, I would have said Detroit, you know, but that Detroit, number one, is not as good as – I think this is their worst team in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
I don't think the 12-5 team that made it to the conference championship, I think was better. Last year when they won 15 games, I think they were better. Defensively, even with all the injuries last year, they still were a top 10 defense in scoring. This year, they're 15th in scoring defense. You mentioned Terrion Arnold, the cornerback, being out is huge in this game because you got to deal with George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, right? Laporta's already out, the tight end. Now you might be out without Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I just think I think Brian Schottenheimer has brought – they look better coached. I know I joked about him earlier in the season when they were losing and everything. They look better coached than they did last year. You don't see the game management mistakes that we used to see under Mike McCarthy, who's obviously was a successful coach. So I think that'll transfer to their mentality, whereas in the past, I don't know if they got kind of full of themselves or they read their press clippings or whatever it was, but I think this team will be more dialed in. And the other thing, Nick, in a few of the games you mentioned that lost, like Denver and stuff, they didn't have this defense, like some of the guys that came back, Overshown. Yeah. But Quinnen Williams obviously has made Kenny Clark better, but Clark is a good player in his own right. Quinnen Williams, they shut down the run. That's nothing against Mike. I still think best thing for them to do would have been to keep Micah. But they do shut down the interior runs.
Absolutely. Here's the situation. Nick's entire thesis hinges on the assertion that they cannot defeat the Chiefs, the Eagles, and the Lions consecutively. The present reality, however, is that the Chiefs are not operating at their typical zenith. The Eagles are not the dominant force we've come to expect, and the Lions have not consistently embodied the identity that made them formidable. It falls to the Detroit Lions to step forward and declare, "No, you're mistaken. We are still that team." When evaluating trustworthiness heading into this specific contest, you would currently place more faith in the Dallas Cowboys. Under normal circumstances, the Lions would command that confidence, but they have not earned that right in recent weeks. Consider the Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champions. If posed the question, who do you trust more right now, the Cowboys or the Eagles, entering this matchup? The rational answer would be the Cowboys. That's simply the nature of current evaluation. You are often judged by your most recent performance. Consequently, the Detroit Lions find themselves in a peculiar and precarious position. Do I believe the Lions will be prepared, motivated, and ready to compete at a high level? I absolutely do. However, they are presently navigating significant injury concerns, some of which are potentially devastating. Will Amon-Ra St. Brown be available? I attempted to research his status, and the information remains ambiguous and uncertain. The reality is, neither you nor I know definitively. This introduces a major variable. Furthermore, Thursday night games often possess an erratic quality due to the short week following a Sunday contest. Even teams emerging from a bye can experience disjointed rhythm. Interestingly, both squads are coming off Thursday games from the previous week, so they've had a full preparation cycle, yet the overall context, following the Thanksgiving holiday, remains unusual. The Cowboys are riding the momentum of a massive victory, while the Lions are reeling from a disheartening loss. This sets the stage for a phenomenal Thursday night spectacle. It is box office material, and I am genuinely excited for this clash. The challenge lies in accurately gauging the Detroit Lions at this juncture, given their injury report and the caliber of opponent they face. The fundamental truth is this: if their defensive unit proves inadequate, if it is merely average or mediocre, not a genuinely good or great defense, then the Dallas Cowboys' offensive attack will experience substantial success. There's no way around it. Should that scenario unfold, the entire burden shifts to the Lions' offense. Even if St. Brown is unavailable, I maintain confidence that Jahmyr Gibbs and the supporting cast can still produce, and I trust Jared Goff's capabilities. Nevertheless, a quarterback requires weapons. The core problem, which I extensively discussed last season, is that managing significant injuries and integrating replacement players is an immensely difficult task, especially for a relatively new offensive coaching staff or play caller. At this point, I'm uncertain who is officially calling plays for Detroit. Dan Campbell has taken over duties, but the situation feels fluid. You must possess considerable experience to navigate such turbulence seamlessly. It is far from simple. I frequently cite Kyle Shanahan as an example. He struggled with roster instability last season, but has demonstrated marked improvement this year, though having a constant like Christian McCaffrey undoubtedly aids continuity. Andy Reid is a master at this. He excels at scheming around personnel fluctuations at receiver, running back, and offensive line. Conversely, Sean McVay has historically faced challenges in this area, though he can undoubtedly learn and evolve over time. The capacity to withstand injuries varies dramatically across coaches and teams. Robert Saleh has performed admirably in managing defensive injuries this season. Regarding the Lions' defense last season, the top 10 scoring defense narrative, even amidst injuries, requires context. First, you must examine when those injuries actually occurred within the season's timeline. Second, they were proficient at limiting scoring against inferior opponents, a capability inherent to a well-run, well-coached team like Detroit. This reinforces a principle I consistently emphasize with the Lions. When an elite team faces subpar competition, there is limited analytical value to extract. The Lions are the quintessential example of this phenomenon. Their points allowed average can be somewhat misleading because their organizational structure and coaching prowess enable them to comprehensively dismantle lesser teams that lack the requisite talent or scheme. They have consistently demonstrated this ability. This game carries monumental significance for the Lions. It means everything. Presently, the three franchises, Chiefs, Eagles, Lions, typically regarded as elite or top-tier contenders, have not manifested the versions we recognize from their recent peaks. Therefore, I cannot accept Nick's shaky logic that they cannot overcome these three in succession. They absolutely can, precisely because the current Chiefs are a 500 team. The Eagles were just dominated by Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears, and the Lions have not been themselves, as evidenced by Dan Campbell's mid-season decision to assume play-calling duties, a move rarely indicative of a smoothly functioning operation. The Eagles arguably require a similar shakeup. The Bears defeated the Eagles. The Lions did not. The Eagles are not performing at an elite level currently. This comparative data is not something I automatically treat as a definitive hierarchy, i.e., Team A beat Team B, therefore Team A is superior. However, it remains data worthy of contemplation. It creates a puzzle. Why was one team capable of a specific achievement while another was not? Sometimes this comparative analysis is crucial. Other times it is entirely irrelevant. Occasionally, you must discard it as fool's gold because it creates a misleading narrative that clouds clearer judgment. It's a delicate balancing act. For the Lions, making a definitive stand at home by defeating the Dallas Cowboys would serve as a powerful statement. We are reclaiming our identity. Successfully slowing down an objectively potent Cowboys offense would be profoundly significant. If perceived defensive weaknesses are exposed as more illusory than real, perhaps inflated by facing struggling opponents, then the Lions' offense, even if somewhat depleted, should still possess sufficient firepower to challenge Dallas effectively. Most teams would covet the talents of a Gibbs or a Jamison Williams. That said, the Detroit Lions have always reminded me of the Philadelphia Eagles in recent seasons. They strike me as a squad whose strength lies more in collective talent than in formidable depth. They rely heavily on their superstars. Therefore, when a key contributor like St. Brown is absent, the impact is severe. This team operates on a greater than the sum of its parts principle when fully healthy, capable of reaching historic offensive heights through impeccable timing, rhythm, and game planning. We witnessed this with the Lions at their best last season and with the Eagles during their Super Bowl run. The special synergy emerges when all pieces are available. It's not simply that they have other good players, it's that the confluence of all their top-tier talent creates a uniquely dominant and exhausting offensive system. Removing a central component like St. Brown doesn't just slightly diminish the offense, it fundamentally alters its ceiling. The resilience or floor is not their defining trait. Their explosive, historic potential is. We are now observing newer, less stable iterations of these teams, making evaluation and prediction considerably more complex. Thus, I will conclude by reiterating, the onus is squarely on the Lions to demonstrate why they deserve renewed trust and confidence. I do not anticipate this being an effortless victory. While I do not doubt the Lions' effort or heart, I harbor legitimate concerns. I have historically expressed skepticism about aspects of their coaching structure, which has led to debates with their passionate fan base. I believe their current defensive coordinator has been effective, but facing a strategist like Dan Quinn requires proving superior tactical preparation. Even with a compromised roster, this game must, at a minimum, be fiercely competitive. The floor cannot collapse beneath them. This is unequivocally a must-have moment. I do believe Dan Campbell will have his squad emotionally and strategically prepared. However, they stand on the precipice of a potential season-defining collapse, a moment where players might look around and feel the campaign slipping away, similar to the current sentiment surrounding the Eagles. The Lions are not quite at that absolute crisis point due to their standing within the division, but they are perilously close. Another demoralizing loss, especially in a high-stakes home game, could cement a narrative of futility, making even a potential playoff berth feel like a futile exercise. But these are simply my personal reflections and anticipations. I would absolutely be delighted to hear your own. What are your thoughts on this pivotal matchup? Which team commands more of your trust at this moment, the Dallas Cowboys or the Detroit Lions? Please share your viewpoints in the comment section below. I make it a point to read every single comment that is posted, so whether you are in full agreement with me or you fundamentally disagree, I want to hear from you. Let's ignite some engaging discussions. Let's engage in some spirited debates. But ultimately, let's simply enjoy the experience and have a great time. Please do consider subscribing to the channel. We are in the process of cultivating a truly wonderful community here, and I would absolutely be thrilled to have you as a part of it. My goal is to build something that we all feel a genuine connection to, something that we are truly enthusiastic and proud to be involved with, and I believe we are making significant progress toward achieving that objective. Please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it genuinely and substantially assists with visibility within the platform's algorithm. Thank you so very much for your time and engagement.